We took the first victory here, just here in Malaysia on 2003. How do you remember those days?
That day was particularly good. We were running a car that was considered to be a little bit out of date by some people at that time, but we'd had a good start to the season already in Melbourne, and we came here quite optimistic. As I remember, qualifying didn't go particularly brilliantly, but at the start of the race there was a bit of a scene at the first corner, took some of the leading cars out, and then David Coulthard was running well, but he had an electrical problem very early on, and then there was Fernando in front of Kimi, and Kimi was very good with the tyres, and on a hot track like this, that worked really well, and his pace just got quicker and quicker. We had more fuel in our car than Alonso did, and when Alonso pitted, Kimi just went for it, and he made enough time to make his stop several laps later and come out ahead, and from that point he was never under any threat, so it was fantastic. I mean, to be honest, he should have won races before that, but they really came together there, and it's just a fantastic feeling. Really, really good.
Was that the final breakthrough for Kimi?
I think I think in Melbourne, it was obvious in Melbourne that he'd made a bit of a step from 2002, his first year with McLaren, and 2003 he just looked like he could win races from the start. And in Melbourne we'd had a problem on that we'd arrived on the grid on wet tyres and everybody else had dry tyres. So we were going to be at the back, but we made a call to change the tyres at the end of the lap, the formation lap, and then there was a safety car, and then he was, I think about halfway in the race he was leading from the back. So unfortunately we had a little problem in the race, and he got a penalty that dropped him to third place, but he was just super competitive from that point. It was really, really on it. And we had a great year that year. I mean, as I said, the car was a bit out of date, really, in some eyes, but we were leading the championship more than halfway through the season. I think we only lost the championship by 1 point. So it was very satisfying to work with a young driver, such an early stage in his career, a car that people were saying wasn't really up to the job, and to take the fight to Michael Schumacher, who was at the top of his form at that time, was a really, really good feeling.
You had really close relationship. You weren't only engineer for Kimi. How was it to work with him at that time, 2003?
I don't want to overstate the relationship, but I had a good relationship with Kimi, and I'd like to consider him still a friend. We don't talk very much, but that's a little bit Kimi. But I absolutely love working with him. He was different to Mika, obviously, who I'd worked with for a long time before, but just to have a young guy who was just so clearly competitive and everything, he just really went for it in a race situation. Even when the car wasn't that great, you knew he'd find something extra, and he didn't take any nonsense from anybody on track. He stood up to Michael Schumacher, he stood up to anyone else who tried to rough him up, and it was just really enjoyable. And he was so good in the car, if there was a situation like today, a wet, dry race or something like that, he'd make the right calls and he'd do really well. I mean, we had so many good races that year. I really enjoyed it. I think it was one of my favourite years.
2013 was the last win of Kimi, and you were also with him at that time. Why has there been so many years now that he hasn't won the races?
Why?
Maybe it's you not being there.
I don't think so, to be fair. No, I just don't think he's been in quite a competitive situation with the car, potentially. It's difficult to say. You'd have to ask him, to be honest. But I don't see any reason why he can't win races. I still see the same fighting spirit. He was P2 yesterday, pole position in Monaco. He's still got it. He's all right.
What do you think how do you think that he's going to manage today in Malaysia, Sepang, last time when we drive here?
If he's on the same sort of form that he was when I worked with him, then I think he'll do really well. He's so good at judging the grip. He's a very natural driver. He drives to the grip of the car. He's not a sort of closed-loop driver. He's an open-loop driver, and I think in these sorts of conditions, as long as the team supports him and they make the right calls on the tyres, he could win this race, no problem.
Thank you so much for your comments, and good race for your team as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.